When she was unable to answer the question about are you better off now than 4 years ago, I think that was illustrative.
Well, 4 years ago, literally, we're in a pandemic. It was an easy answer.
We can look at exactly what happened. He's already been president. And we can look at what happened when she was vice president, and it's not good.
I have a confession to make. There was a time when I thought Mark Cuban was kind of a cool dude. Think about it. You know, he's sort of a tech geek. He fell into some money, made his gajillions by selling off his company. Actually was somewhat groundbreaking in terms of, I think it was high definition television and video servicing and video handling online and a couple of other different avenues and angles. Then parlayed that into some pretty successful investments. And then here's this, geeky kid who ends up buying his childhood favorite NBA team, the Dallas Mavericks. I thought it was cool that he used to go to all the games and get involved and yell at the refs. And it's like, because a nerd like me would love to do that. If I made my millions and gajillions and I could buy my favorite team and then, be on the sidelines and root him on and get in the refs' face, I would do that, right? And whenever he spoke out politically, it seemed like he was trying to sort of give lip service to both sides, as it were. I admit that to you now because obviously he's a complete and total douchebag. He's a horrible person, or they've got something on him. I don't know if it's an Epstein Island thing. I mean, he did have his own Me Too situation with the Dallas Mavericks, if you remember right, with him and a couple of his employees. They had to clean house. He eventually ended up selling the team. Maybe they got more like Me Too dirt on him, and he's just trying to keep the dogs off by completely going all the way into the woke Kamala Harris camp at this point and being completely anti-Trump, which he wasn't. Back in 2015, 2016, he wasn't anti-Trump, but now he's insane. He's completely lost it. Well, he's become a Kamala Harris surrogate at this point. And he showed up on CNBC this morning, and he ran into a buzzsaw called Joe Kernan.
When she was unable to answer the question about are you better off now than 4 years ago, I think that was illustrative.
Well, 4 years ago, literally, we're in a pandemic. It was an easy answer.
We can look at exactly what happened. He's already been president. And we can look at what happened when she was vice president. And it's not good. The comparison.
Being the president, Joe, as you know, is different than being vice president. It's not close, right?
So she can take credit for the good things that happened with Biden, but she didn't have anything to do with the bad things.
Trump. See, by the way, this is exactly how an interview is supposed to go. When the journalist is intelligent and engaged and actually can talk back and say, "What are you talking about?" So every time she says, every time there's something bad that we point to, well, she was just vice president, right? So it's not her fault. Good on Joe, but it gets better actually as Mark Cuban tries to run interference for Kamala Harris, despite the truth.
Do you think any of the 40-year highs in inflation are attributable to price gouging? And do you care that is the entire premise? No,
you're misrepresenting what she's saying, Joe.
I'm watching her ads now.
Okay, so then
you've seen the ads.
Yes, of course. Right.
I'm going to bring down
during a crisis.
Okay. What do you think caused the 40-year? Do you think supermarket gouging had anything to do with?
No.
You think it was putting too much stimulus on top of a supply constrained?
Biden and
it just looks to me like they're not being truthful with this, and they're trying to deflect blame.
No, but it's
to
still
corporations
right?
because of their record.
That's so good, and he even got Mark Cuban to concede that, which is, impressive that he at least didn't completely lie through his teeth. But this is important what just happened here, and it should happen all over the place. It should happen anytime any surrogate or any of the candidates from Kamala Harris's campaign actually engage in any sort of question and answer, because it's true. The only thing they're saying, concrete policy, she's asked, what are you going to do about the cost of living? And she's, well, I'm going to bring prices down, which is a nonsense answer. It's a complete nonsense answer. It's like, what are you going to do about the ocean being wet? Well, I'm going to make sure that the ocean is not dry, right? I mean, that's what she's saying. What can you do about the cost of living? Bring prices down. Okay, follow-up question. How are you going to bring prices down? And the only thing she's got is she's going to prosecute companies for price gouging. And so, of course, the follow-up question to that is, well, are prices high right now because of price gouging? And the answer is no. So it's a bullshit answer. And Joe Kernan just called Mark Cuban on that very same bullshit. And he had to concede. Yeah, that's first. I do like that Mark Cuban says, well, you're misrepresenting. And he says, no, I'm not misrepresenting. I'm telling you exactly what she's saying in her ads. All right. And then we get into it a little bit more even. And this is kind of fun because there's been a lot of back and forth between Mark Cuban and Elon Musk on social media. As you know, Elon Musk, a much more successful man than Mark Cuban, has thrown his support to Donald Trump. Mark Cuban is trying to, me too, but he's over with Kamala Harris. So watch how the two of them are interacting these days.
The impact.
But there is a critique that actually she will say whatever the audience wants, right? I mean, we look at the tipping, the tipping thing that took place in Nevada. Given some of the details that we don't have on certain things, is that because some of those details would be less favorable in certain audiences?
Do you see the Elon quote? I don't know what you think of Elon, but
I like Elon.
I like Elon too. But she was at 28% favorability,
right?
And then, as you say, things change. She's all the way up to about 50%. I would just argue that filling in the blanks does not account for that move, and that the media coverage has been so positive and almost, Mark, that it's like we don't have to worry about trying to elect this guy who is clearly not up for another 4 years, and it's not Donald Trump. So they would have the left and the people that need a candidate would have embraced anyone at that point. And ABC, it was 100% positive coverage of her, 92% negative of Trump. So Elon says, what changed the media coverage?
Okay, first, what's the most watched news channel? Who are the most watched and viewed and listened to podcasts? Who are the most watched and listened to? Or
is it
viewed?
Fox?
Yeah. Right?
Okay.
I mean, it's not close, right? The number one shows are all Fox. The number one podcast,
so
right.
Even in spite of that, she's been able to.
Not in spite of that, in spite of that, meaning the mainstream media is not who you think it is. The mainstream media truly leans right.
Maybe that's why it's only.
I got to interrupt this just for a minute as a member of the right of center media that streams, as you know. I love this argument so much when they make this argument, because it's actually quite revealing about what they would actually expect from the media if they had full control of every delivery system, right? Now, what kind of deranged lunatic and liar do you have to be to sit down and recognize the current media landscape in this country when you've got cable news, CNN, MSNBC, and despite this program for 2 hours in the morning, CNBC, plus ABC News, CBS News, NBC News, PBS News, which we pay for. Thank you very much. Then you've got all of the local stations that are owned by those networks. Plus you've got primetime television originating from Hollywood or from New York, where the main storyline, if they ever talk about cultural or political issues, are 99% slanted to the left, because it's all created, written, starring, directed, produced, and greenlit by full-on left-wing liberal Democrats. Then you've got the music industry, other than some country bands out of Nashville doing exactly the same thing. Then you've got the late-night television shows, except for one, over on Fox with Gutfeld. Then you've got Saturday Night Live. Then you've got all the cable programming that you see, from Bill Maher to John Oliver to Comedy Central and The Daily Show, and across the board there as well. Then you've got every awards program that you see. Then you've got the colleges and the universities, right, with every professor and every department in academia overwhelmingly from the political left, and on and on and on. And how delusional and how demented and how warped, Mark Cuban, do you have to be to sit on this show and say, oh, but Fox is the number one cable show and Ben Shapiro is the number one podcast. So, if you think about it, the media is dominated by conservatives. Which, by the way, is such an obvious bullshit lie from these people, number one. But number two, as I said, it's incredibly revealing, because they can't stand the fact that they don't have all of it. They want all of it. They want you to, they want us off of every video platform. They want this show gone. They can't stand that Shapiro and the folks over at Daily Wire do so well. They want Bongino and Rumble blown up. They can't stand it. And if it exists, they are repelled by it. And they obsess over it and focus on it. Think about what he just said. They want Tucker to be out of business. They say it all the time. They want Fox News bankrupt or canceled. That's why they have Media Matters for America and all of these other left-wing groups trying to cancel people on the right every chance they get. They want Town Hall Media gone. They want Salem Media gone. They want talk radio gone. They have since Rush Limbaugh started 30 years ago. They hate it. And even though they dominate all of those things that I just told you they dominated, they can't stand the fact that they don't have everything. They can't stand the fact that you have a choice, that you have an option to go off of the plantation they've created and get away from their propaganda and actually hear something different. I love it when they do this. It's hilarious, actually. Oh, and the obsession over Elon Musk, too. They hate the fact that there's one social media platform out there that actually embraces free speech, at least more than the other ones do. All right, a little bit more from them.
Tied then.
Well, maybe, right?
I don't know.
Where do you think she really is in terms of what this election is, in terms of the polls and the betting? Do you look more at betting sites?
No,
what do
when
you look at?
Like, I'm an investor in Polymarket, right?
Okay.
Through a fund, and U.S. citizens can't bet on there, right? So it's kind of a meaningless number. Now, predicted, I haven't really followed, so I don't know.
Right. I was, we've disagreed on things. We go back and forth sometimes on Twitter. I just think I don't know whether it's good or bad that there are half the people that under no circumstances, no matter what, would ever vote for Donald Trump.
Can you imagine why?
On the other half, this is where I'm getting.
Okay.
On the other half, there are half the people that under no circumstances can look at what her comments have been in the past, and there's just, for whatever, just having gone back to, with me, the Dukakis days, the McGovern days, there's just no way that, and I'm not speaking for what I would do now, but there are people who think it's so patently far left and progressive, they would never under any circumstances vote for Kamala Harris. And here we are.
Right.
And have you convinced anyone to change?
Yeah, of course.
You've convinced people to change?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, I haven't convinced.
All right, let's move on because then they can talk about the border. And again, this is Mark Cuban. I don't know. He can't be dumb, right? It's impossible that he's dumb. He's obviously got a brain. So you explain this to me when they talk about the border. Explain Mark Cuban to me, if you could.
Talk about what the tariffs are going to do. In one case, we know exactly what his tariffs did the first time, 1.9% inflation. We know exactly, that's where it was. That's where it was. The other thing, Mark, I still think immigration and illegal immigration is a huge drain on a lot of the jobs that we've added. There's been no net gain among natural born. I'm not saying I don't want immigration. We all love immigration. It's made this, we're all immigrants. Right. We're all descended from immigrants. But I don't think you can have an open southern border.
No, I agree. And she agrees too. She said the exact same thing.
She had a chance.
Yeah, but Joe, there's a lot of COOs that when the CEO leaves for whatever reason, come in, take over, and have completely different policies and approaches, right? That's just the way it works. When you're second in command, you do what your boss tells you to do. He delegates authority to you.
But the border was supposed to be her.
Yeah, but it's still the same thing. It's his policies. What he said to her was, you go down and you use diplomacy to try to improve, to try to reduce the flow, the migration of people across the border, right? And when they finally came around, and it took too long, I agree, but when they finally got there, now look at the results. It didn't take a wall, but yet the crossing numbers are where Trump's were when pre-pandemic, at the same number. So it worked. So what she did actually worked.
All right. So number one, that's a lie. The numbers are not the same as when Trump was president, number one. Number two, if there's anything bad about the border policy over the last 3.5 years, it's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's Joe Biden's fault for directing the policy and making her do something that apparently she didn't want to do. That being said, though, she did actually end up fixing the problem, and she should get all the credit for it. So connect all those dots for me, please. Yeah. She can't be blamed for the problems, but the problem actually got fixed because she fixed it, even though when it was a problem, she was just carrying out what Biden said to do, but then she fixed it anyway. And I asked you to make sense of it all, but you can't make sense of it all because none of it makes any sense. And he's smarter than that. He's not an ignoramus. And so there's only one possible answer to all of this. And we've got the solution for you. How can Mark Cuban be talking out of his butt like this and be so nonsensical and contradict himself and make absolutely no logical sense when we know he's not an idiot? This is how.
Could I ask you, Mark, whether you would entertain being a Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary in a Harris
Head of the
administration?
SEC. Head of the SEC. That's the job I would take. Maybe HHS.
He wants a job. He wants a job in the Kamala Harris administration. He's auditioning. He's auditioning for a gig in the Kamala Harris administration. SEC, you want to put him in charge of the Security Exchange Commission? Really? This guy? Or Health and Human Services? This guy? You know what I would love? I would love for Trump to sort of identify the kind of people that he would put in his cabinet. We sort of know already, right? But it would be great for him to say, listen, I know a lot of you might not want to elect me for whatever reason because you believe the BS that you see on TV. Maybe you don't like my tweets. Maybe you don't like my hair. I don't care. You don't have to like me. But not only do I have the policies that you agree with, I can tell by the polls, but I'm also going to assemble a team of serious professionals who are successful, who have gotten shit done, and they're going to get shit done now. Here they are. This is the kind of people that I would put in. Like he did this when he won in 2016, but it was Supreme Court justices. He said, listen, we have an open seat. Here's the kind of judges I'm going to pick. And that was a game changer for a lot of people. Well, how about this? Here's the kind of people I would pick for Secretary of State. Here's the kind of people I would pick for Secretary of State or for Defense Secretary or for Treasury or for Health and Human Services. Just an idea. This is the kind of people that I would consider. I think that'd be brilliant. And then compare them to the kind of people Kamala Harris would consider. We know the kind of people Kamala Harris would consider. Mark Cuban is nuts. And everything that you're seeing from him right now, all of the ludicrous stuff that he's saying is about getting a gig, including this one.
To those from Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, who's a socialist, what do you mean?
Oh, it was a race for socialism, right? Bernie said that credit card companies should cap their interest rates at 15%. Donald Trump, being the socialist that he is, had to beat Bernie. So Donald Trump went out and recommended that interest rate caps be set to 10%. The fact that he's even suggesting price controls and price caps is socialism 101. You haven't heard that from the vice president. You have heard that from Donald Trump.
Now, first of all, Donald Trump floats ideas a lot. That's fine. They're not firm policy positions that he's put out there. But even if you take this for what it is, capping temporarily interest rates, because by the way, right now, credit card interest rates, I think the average credit card interest rates when Donald Trump left office was like 15.4%. They're now like close to 30% because of the Biden-Harris administration. By the way, just so you know, if you want to know why credit cards are so wealthy and being able to charge those kind of interest rates, take a look at the state of Delaware and their relationship with credit cards, insurance companies, and banks. Joe Biden's Delaware. Just go ahead and search that. Go down the rabbit hole a bit and you'll figure it all out. All right, but set that aside for a minute. Even if Donald Trump said, listen, to sort of get us back on right track and we need to cap interest rates. The credit card companies have been making tons of money on us for a while here. Maybe we should cap those interest rates for 10% for a temporary period until we get back on straight and we get regular mortgage rates down and people can refinance and things like that, which they haven't been able to do because of mortgage rates. He's calling that socialism. He's calling that communism. He's calling that price controls when it hasn't even a firm policy. Kamala Harris's firm policy that is on her website, finally, it took her 2 months to get a policy that she's given speeches about, is literal actual price controls on produce, on groceries, on the means of production that she wants to control the prices of. Honestly, she wants the power to price control based on any industry that she decides to target. And this guy is concerned about interest rates for a couple of credit card companies temporarily to get the economy back on its feet. You got to be nuts. You got to be nuts. You got to be stupid. You got to be a liar. Yeah. you got to be auditioning to have a job in Kamala Harris's White House. That's the only explanation. Because honestly, you show up with your resume and they say, what are your special skills? Well, I'm insane. I'm nuts. I come across like a lunatic, and I'm really good at lying on television. You're hired. Mark Cuban, welcome aboard. You're our kind of guy.